Welcome, everyone, to this course on becoming the best, building the natural organization, leading and using the Process Enneagram. I'm Richard Knowles, the creator and developer of most of the knowledge, tools, and technology that I'll share in this course. Early on in this work, I learned a lot about John Bennett, a British philosopher, and his systematics, and that gave me good insights about the Enneagram and what could be done there. And a little later, I had the opportunity to work with Meg Wheatley and learn about chaos, complexity, and complex adaptive systems. Making these complex ideas accessible to regular people like us and learning to apply these ideas and technology to working in organizations was a big job. My effort has been to try to make this simple so all of us can use it. This 6-module course gathers together the knowledge and skills I've created, developed, and successfully applied over the last 35 years as I've helped to bring complex adaptive systems, thinking, and dialogue to improving the performance of organizations. I'm one of the pioneers in the field and want to share what I've learned with you so you can take this further into your own organizations and your consulting practices. Using this knowledge and these skills will give you a big competitive advantage. It's a blue ocean opportunity in that there is almost no competition. It works quickly. It does not require long training courses, and it does not require new computer programs or capital investment. Now, this course is built on this foundational idea. Organizations are complex, adapting, self-organizing networks of people. As we go forward and you run into new ideas, think forward and frame them into this kind of a way of thinking, rather than trying to reframe them back into the old paradigm. In 1999, Dee Hock, the founder of Visa International, said, "We are at the very point in time where a 400-year-old age is dying and another is struggling to be born. A shifting of culture, science, society, and institutions enormously greater than the world has ever experienced. Ahead, the possibilities of regeneration of individuality, liberty, community, and ethics such as the world has never known, and a harmony with nature, with one another, and with the divine intelligence such as the world has never dreamed." Things have progressed a great deal since he made these comments in 1999, and I was fortunate to have the opportunity to be in several workshops with him and get to know him. He's a fine man. I want to share with you the purpose of this work. It's about becoming the best we can be, gaining the advantages of embracing the power of the natural organization. So our purpose is to unlock the energy and creativity of the people in the organization. We want to do this in a way that harmonizes the natural processes of self-organization and doing the actual work. That builds on partner-centered leadership, and I'll talk more about that, and creates a healthier, more sustainable organization, so that success is quickly achieved through rapid improvements in things like effectiveness, productivity, safety, agility, resilience, quality, customer service, etc., while reducing the waste of accidents, injuries, pollution, and dysfunctional behaviors, all at the same time. In preparations for this course, I did a pilot course and had several people join me and share some of these ideas. One of the people who participated in that course was Barry Foster. Barry is an executive coach, author, and entrepreneur. And he said, "Your credibility builds the trust every participant, especially myself, needs to fully engage in such an important and timely topic. I could immediately apply the Process Enneagram to my own work in launching a Blue Ocean project, and I'm eternally grateful to have had you take me through the process firsthand. I would recommend your leadership and using the Process Enneagram program to anyone who is in a leadership position and needs a process to build and develop a stronger partner-centered teamwork. Another participant in the course was Daniel Proudfoot. He recently retired as the assistant airport manager from Antrim County Airport in Bel Air, Michigan. He said the Process Enneagram course is a direct, deep dive into the practical workings of how businesses can be run. He shows you through his own examples how difficulty and strife can be a resource for higher achievement and morale. Uncovering the hidden elephants of the culture can unleash energy necessary to gain a commitment necessary to transform the infighting into the cooperation of a proud and responsible workforce. As I mentioned earlier, I've been using this approach for many years. And here's some feedback I got from Paul Avey, who's the managing director of the Weir Minerals Multiflow Pump Manufacturing Plant in Coolum Beach, Queensland, Australia. This plant had about 100 employees and was having some safety issues when they invited Claire Knowles, my partner, my wife, and me to conduct a 2-day workshop for them. Dick Knowles uses a hardcore business improvement process that helped to increase our turnover and profitability by 3-fold in just 2 years. And we saved over $100,000 in lower costs related to injuries. If you want to more sustainably change your organization for the better and develop and improve quality of work for everyone in the company, then talk to Dick Knowles. You can see from Paul's comments that not only did their safety improve, but everything else improved as well. I hope that you will find this course as useful to you as Barry and Daniel did to build your knowledge and ability to use the Process Enneagram and other complexity tools so you can achieve the sorts of results that I did with Paul Avey. Now that I've given you a flavor about what we're about, I want to share some things about myself and the context in which I developed this thinking. I worked in the DuPont company for about 36 years, part of the time in research, and I got 40 patents. This picture is a picture of the plant where I was the plant manager in Bell, West Virginia, and it's a place where I learned an awful lot of what I'm going to share with you. The plant is about 1 mile long and about 1/3 of a mile wide, and it sits on the banks of the Kanawha River. It's in a valley that's about 800 feet deep, so any emissions from the plant get trapped in the valley, and we don't want to pour stuff into the river that will pollute the river. The plant had about 1,300 employees, and we handled the second highest number of hazardous materials in the DuPont company. This big storage tank here in the lower right of the picture is 110 feet high and 100 feet in diameter, and it can hold 40 million pounds of anhydrous ammonia. Up in this part of the plant, we handled hydrogen cyanide. So we were doing things where we had to be extraordinarily good at handling these hazardous chemicals while we were learning to lead and work in a new way. So this was quite a challenge for us. Many times I would try to dream about what's going on. How can we be better? Have you ever dreamed of becoming a true winner? Of becoming more sustainable? Having everybody in the organization pulling together? Building a psychologically safe environment in your organization? Overcoming the resistance to change? Having projects come in ahead of schedule and under budget? Helping your clients exceed their expectations? Having teams that really worked well together, not just talked about things, but really worked well together? Have you ever dreamed about building a new future? I've dreamed things like this. I dream a lot. Let me tell you a story about fulfilling these dreams. It began with a fire. The organization, our plant in West Virginia, had shifted from becoming a highly dysfunctional plant to a high-performance team in no time at all when we had the fire. We went from dysfunctional to highly functional just very quickly. As I watched the people work, I saw deeper patterns of behavior emerge. But then after the crisis passed, we fell back into the old dysfunctional behaviors. We didn't know how to sustain it. And I'll talk more about that as we go forward. Let me talk about the fire and our repairs using the Process Enneagram as a template, but I want you to see how the natural way in which the people work can be applied to the figure. Our identity was we had a fire. It wasn't a great big fire, but it took one of our buildings and one of our production operations down. It was very clear we had a fire, and that was the big problem. And our intention was we had to put the fire out. Our fire brigades were well trained. They worked together well. They shared information. They helped each other. They didn't play any kind of horseplay or games among themselves. They didn't lie and cheat. They were doing very, very good, hard, open sharing of information, good work. And they dealt with the issues and the ambiguities of the problems and the mess that they found when they arrived in the building that was on fire. And there were two teams they formed, one to fight the fire and one to do search and rescue, to be sure there was no one in the building. And then they put the fire out. They did that quickly in about 15 minutes. And then after that was done, they had an after-action review. And they talked about what had gone on, and they learned a lot more, so that the next time they had to respond to a fire, they could be even more effective. They shared lots of information so everybody could see what was going on. And their trust among the brigade members kept building and getting stronger and stronger. Then when it came to trying to recover from the fire, our identity was we had a damaged facility with only about 3 weeks' supply of product for our customers. We were in very, very serious trouble. So our intention was we had to get back into production and supply our customers in 3 weeks or less. Spontaneously, the people worked like the fire brigade did. They put down all the dysfunctional behaviors of lying and cheating and covering up things. They shared information. They helped each other. They looked out for each other. The crafts crossed and helped each other. They did all kinds of things that were really, really quite innovative and good. And then they looked at the damage and looked at the work that had to be done, and they began to self-organize into teams. A team would form, an ad hoc team would form to fix a piece of equipment, replace something, take care of the wiring. When that was done, a new team would form, and it went on, and they were working quickly. They did the dismantlement work and the repairs and the startup, and they did it really quickly. It was really great to see what they did. Afterwards, we reflected and learned a little. We really didn't know how important this was, and we didn't do it very well. And so our process of working extraordinarily well together fell apart, and we became quite dysfunctional again. We did share some information, but not very much. During the repairs and recovery, trust developed nicely, but then it too began to fall apart. But this process spontaneously revealed itself when the management processes were stripped off by the emergency of the fire. And so we said, we got to do some more of this. We got to try this again to see if this stuff really is as successful and as powerful as what it looked like here. And so we picked out a problem. That was our new identity. And we developed a clear and compelling goal for that particular problem. And then we're going to work together the way the fire brigade team showed us, helping each other, listening to each other, learning together. These kind of things are so important. And then we worked on trying to understand the barriers that were holding us back from solving the problem. And in the course of doing that, people began to self-organize into teams to do the work and to actually identify and solve the problem. And they did solve the problem down here. And then we began to do a better job about reflecting on how to get better. We began to realize this is an important piece of this thing. And we shared information more abundantly and openly. And trust and interdependence began to build. And we suddenly realized this stuff is really very powerful. This is things that we need to be doing together. So we kept expanding the effort. We went around and around the Process Enneagram, project after project. We kept listening and learning to use the Process Enneagram. The results kept getting better and better. For example, our earnings went up 300%, and productivity was up 45% in just 4 years. That's pretty fast for a group of 1,300 people. Injury rates dropped 97% in just 3 years, and our total waste to the environment went down 95% in 5 years. Another big thing that we did in working together was that we were able to make 16 major process control system changes without building parallel systems, and we never failed. And the first one we picked out was a $50 million business, and our engineering department in DuPont came in and said, well, it's going to cost $6 million. Take 2 years. We're going to build a parallel control room, and when we get the process running, we'll give it to the operators. On the plant, we said we don't have time or money for this, and we had some excellent engineers, and we decided that we would run without running parallel. We would make the changes without going parallel. We did that so well, we did 15 more changes, a total of 16 changes of process control systems. We never went parallel, and we never failed. That saved us millions of dollars and people years of effort. And morale went way up. People really felt good about being able to do this. And the waste of injuries, incidents, and harassment and bullying virtually disappeared as we began to learn to work this way. And we became one of the top 2 or 3 plants among all the 150 plants in the DuPont company. We had gone from about the worst to about the best. And we kept expanding the effort. We went around and around and around. We kept listening and learning, and the results kept getting better. We kept getting better and better, and we kept learning. The Process Enneagram revealed the natural processes of how people want to work. In the fire, the management processes were stripped off, and the leadership processes emerged. People already know how to do this. It shows up spontaneously. Open, free flow of information is the blood of the system. The lifeblood of the organization is information. Listening, being respectful, building trust and authenticity are critical. And people become involved in using the Process Enneagram, energy and creativity emerged. And that was very exciting to see how that was beginning to happen. And we learned to engage the natural power of self-organization. Things became more and more coherent, and excellent results came faster and faster. And we all learned and developed new ideas. And I learned along with the people because so much of this was new to me as well. But we take a little step, it worked. We take another little step, and we kept doing it over and over. We co-created our future. And in the course of this, resistance to change virtually disappeared. And we discovered the bowl. As groups of people are self-organizing, we need to have a playing field or a container to hold that so that it doesn't shatter. And the bowl provides order and focus for the business and freedom for the people to learn and grow and make decisions around their own work. And we learned about the sustainability ratios, which are ways to evaluate the decisions that we were making about whether they would help us have more sustainability in the future or not. And we learned together. In the Process Enneagram, we found is a meta model. It's a model for consulting and communications. When we work with clients, we begin with an important client problem. Their problem, not our problem. And then using the Process Enneagram with the people in the organization, they come together in conversation, identifying deeper issues and needs. Solutions for their complex problems quickly emerge in their conversations, and people self-organize into teams. Action plans get developed and are implemented quite quickly. People co-create their living strategic plan. And using the Process Enneagram, the whole picture, the parts, and the interactions of the parts is clear. If additional leadership, management, or safety training or whatnot needs to be done, it can be done under the umbrella of the Process Enneagram meta model. It supports the whole picture. In working together this way, everything improves. And this work now is spreading. Since, as I mentioned, my retirement from DuPont, I've taken this to many places around the world. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, U.S., and other places. My colleague Tim Dalmo in Australia has taken it to many other countries as well. And while this work began 35 years ago, it is withstanding the test of time. For example, in one recent client who was experiencing 5 to 6 injuries a year, Claire and I did a one-day Process Enneagram workshop with the people. The number of injuries immediately dropped to 0, and they went injury-free for a year. Then one person had a small cut, but since then they've not had any injuries for 2 years. So as a result of the one-day workshop, they went from a projected number of injuries for 3 years of 15 to 18 to just 1. And in the course of doing that, they improved their communications, they improved the quality of the work. Everybody was involved in one way or another in helping to make improvements, not just in safety, but in everything else what they were doing. So this work spreads. Once you begin to get your work going with safety, it spreads. So I want to talk a little bit more specifically now about the course Leading and Using the Process Enneagram. This is a 6-month course. We'll share some unique insights about leading and give you an in-depth introduction to the use of the Process Enneagram. The Process Enneagram is a meta model. It's a model that's an umbrella over many models. It's a blue ocean tool, enabling harmonization of the natural processes of self-organization and how work gets done, the doing. And these, as I mentioned earlier, were revealed to us when we had the fire and the management processes were stripped off. The use of the Process Enneagram brings people and organizations together around this vision and mission, and they quickly produce excellent results. The deliverables for this course are going to be insights about leadership and managership. Leaders and managers are people. Leaders can be anywhere in the organization. Managers tend to be in assigned positions and have authority to allocate resources of money and time of people and whatnot. Leadership and managership are what leaders and managers do. You'll learn about the nature of problems, how complex adaptive systems actually work. You'll learn about change taking place one conversation at a time. You'll learn about harmonizing the natural processes of self-organization and doing, and helping people to co-create their future. You'll learn some new processes and tools, one being the Process Enneagram and how to use it. Another is the bowl, and another is the sustainability ratios that I mentioned earlier. This is the course schedule. Module 1, we're doing the introductions and the foundational work, which we're doing right now. In Module 2, we'll go deeply into leading and managing and introduce the Process Enneagram more deeply. In Module 3, we'll talk about how complex systems are usually governed by simple rules and do an even deeper dive into the Process Enneagram technology and use. In Module 4, I'll share some case studies with you so you can see how it actually resulted in impressive changes in work in different kinds of organizations. And in Module 5, I'll talk about transformation and waking up. And in Module 6 will be a summary. We'll be talking about creating the safe conditions and partner-centered leadership. So this is the agenda for Module 1. We're already partway through it, as you can see, and we'll complete that today and keep moving forward. Now, when we had the fire, and I'm trying to understand what happened and why we couldn't sustain the work, several really important questions came to mind. One of them is, why is it that when you put a nice group of people together in an organization, their behavior turns into garbage? The second question was, when we have a crisis and people do extraordinary work together, like we did in the fire and recovery, why can't we do this all the time? And I've struggled with those questions and become more and more confident that we're getting the answers to both of these. And these are going to be things that will come out as we go through the course together. Now here's a picture of the Process Enneagram itself. It's a simple figure. The points are identified as identity, intention, issues and ambiguities, relationship, principles and standards of behavior, the work or the doing, how information is created and used, what people are learning and new potential being created, and how they structured inside, and how's the outside world, the context structured. Whenever we do work together with the Process Enneagram, it always begins with an opening question that's important for the client, as I mentioned earlier. And then all these questions are addressed with respect to the opening question. And we do this with a cross-section of people in the organization. As we go around the perimeter, we see who and what we are with respect to the question. When we follow the hidden inner lines, we then can see how and why things happen as they do. And these are the patterns, these inner lines that were revealed when we had the fire and the management processes were stripped off. Now, I do a lot of thinking and talking about management, so I want to just get into it and get a little more explicit so you can see where I'm coming from. In top-down management, which has its roots way back with Frederick Taylor's book, Principles of Scientific Management, in 1910, people are treated as if they're interchangeable parts of the machine. There's one-way communications and little feedback. Management says what to do, and you're supposed to go do it. People do not like being treated this way, and this really leads to deep-seated frustration and anger and low morale. Some people just suck it up and do their work because they need a job. Other times you get really screwy behavior taking place that gets you into trouble. For example, we do a lot of talking at people. Bill, do this. Joe, do that. Lots of the injuries and incidents that come about because people are careless, they're in a hurry, they're not paying attention. They don't like the boss. There are all kinds of reasons for a lot of these injuries taking place. We have problems with bullying and harassment. People begin to take out their anger and frustration on each other. And these are very pervasive. Much more pervasive than most people think. About half the organizations in the United States, based on a recent Gallup poll, have problems with bullying and harassment both. And unfortunately, about half the bullies are managers and supervisors. A lot of this then leads to resistance to change. And when we're working in that kind of an environment, we tend not to want to talk to each other. We tend to hold back. And this blocks the information flows. And this can be very, very detrimental to the organization. So that's one picture of top-down management. Here's a picture of what partnering and partner-centered leadership begins to look like. It's a very different picture. Organizations are complex, adapting, self-organizing networks of people. People want respect. They want to be listened to and feel valued. People want to be talking with each other and with the managers, not at each other. People want to know what's going on and be included. Almost all information is shared. The only information not being shared is private personnel information that may come up. Anybody can talk to anyone, and there's lots of feedback. So if an operator wants to go talk to the plant manager, he goes and talks to the plant manager. Or even the company president, and sometimes that happens. Anybody can talk to anybody, and this gives lots of feedback and opens up the flow of information. Everybody wants to contribute and to co-create their future. And I say everybody, I mean almost everybody. And so what this does is it provides order and focus for the business, as well as openness and freedom for the people to make decisions close to their work, to learn and grow and to get better and better and better. When we work this way, we get a breakthrough. When people come together to identify and solve the deep, complex problems, the decks are cleared for amazing performance. And as I said, most of the surface dysfunctional problems go away. Top-down management interferes with the natural processes of self-organization and doing the work. The use of Process Enneagram, along with other complexity tools, enables the people to do their best. It opens it up. And an example of how top-down management can interfere with the process of self-organization. Think about a reception in which you've participated in. There were several hundred people. People were clustered in different groups. They were moving from group to group. Nobody assigned them to any group. They moved as their interests changed. The room was so noisy you could hardly hear yourself. Now suppose as the new manager I come in and say to the people, hey, wait a minute, you're in the wrong groups. I got to rearrange it so we can get this right. What do you suppose happens to that high level of energy in that room that you encountered? It goes right through the floor. Some people leave. Some people go to the bathroom and never come back. Some people shut down mentally. That simple act of saying, hey, you got to do it my way, not that way, shuts down this process of self-organization. So these processes are powerful, yet fragile as well. I've seen these kinds of things play out at Bell as well as in many of the organizations in which I've worked. Now, one of the areas, as I mentioned, that I'm pretty good at is safety. And I do a lot of work still around safety. In the last 5 or 6 years in the United States, this is based on Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers. In the last 5 to 6 years, the number of fatalities has remained in the range of 5,200 to 5,300 people a year. We're killing somebody at work in about 90 minutes or so. Every 90 minutes, someone dies. If we can help organizations identify and solve the deeper complex problems, we can break through and experience many, many fewer injuries and fatalities. And I saw this at my plant in West Virginia when the numbers went down so dramatically. Using the thinking tools and methods shared in this course will accomplish this breakthrough. In this slide, here's the Process Enneagram again in the center. The Process Enneagram is a focused, disciplined, dialogical process. It helps people solve complex problems. It builds the social connections among them they need to do the work. And it releases the energy and emotional commitment to do the work quickly and well, all at the same time. And I've seen workshop after workshop where in the course of a day, all that just blossoms out. Beverly McCarter and Brian White wrote in their book, Leadership in Chaotic Organizations, say the Process Enneagram appears to be the link between complexity theory and practical application. There's lots of complexity theory. There are lots of papers being written. There aren't very many models that I know of that actually take that and down so we can use it in the workplace with regular people and make real progress and do good work together. Now, the deep-seated problems in the organization are causing a lot of dysfunctional behaviors, which I've talked about, the bullying, harassment, and whatnot. We need to create an environment where there is psychological safety, not just physical safety, but psychological safety. We need to create the space for psychological safety because it's a key leadership function the leaders have to do. When they don't feel safe, they shut down. They won't express themselves. Fear of criticism, humiliation, harassment, and bullying are powerful, and that shuts down the flow of information. And when people fear speaking up, information flows shut down, and they're unable to learn and grow. The organization is also unable to find new possibilities and opportunities that they don't even know about, but that will emerge as people share information. Information flow is like the lifeblood of the organization, and top-down management does not create the space for psychological safety, and information flows. And so I'll just review quickly the top-down management process. People are treated like interchangeable parts, one-way communication, deep frustration and anger, surface problems that are getting in the way and blocking us. And these surface problems have a disproportionate influence and a negative impact on the performance of the organization. Simple things like harassment and bullying are extremely costly and extremely detrimental to the organization. The negative impact on performance is huge. Waste is rampant. Costs rise. Injuries increase. And when we talk about dysfunctional behaviors like bullying or harassment or murder, these things are not separate. They are all on a continuum. So on this chart, I've shown the relationship between the frequency of this is a chart that shows the cost of the dysfunctional behaviors and the severity. So repetitive rudeness and disrespect, each one of those individually is not very costly, but they build. Lack of respect and caring of, or incivilities occur, harassment of women, and it gets worse, and the bullying, unsafe behaviors and attitudes. And again, we have the 2.9 million injuries, 5,333 fatalities, 761 homicides, 307 suicides. These are not very frequent, but they get to be much, much more expensive as they build, and it's a continuum. So these kinds of behaviors have a disproportionate influence on the performance of the organization. And when we use the Process Enneagram, most of this stuff gets eliminated. Now I'm going to shift a little bit here from talking about dysfunctional behaviors to looking at the nature of the problems that we have in front of us. And we need to understand the nature of the problems so that we can use the right tools to solve them. Now, Dave Snowden has done a lot of work on this, and he's put problems into 4 general classes. Simple problems. A simple problem is like me getting dressed in the morning. I have a pretty good idea what I need to do, and I have a pretty good idea what it'll be like when I get done. The next level of problem he calls complicated problems. This is like a production line. It could be many, many, many steps, or a payroll. Many, many functions. You go from A, B, C, D to F theoretically, but often it goes A, B, C, D, F, A. It's all over the map. These are the kind of problems that Frederick Taylor was talking about in his book on scientific management. But the world is complex. We have dynamical interaction of many components taking place. Most of the really tough problems in organizations are complex problems. We have diverse groups of people struggling to try to figure out what they ought to be doing. And when they come up with a suggestion, the level of confidence in it working may not be very high. And the 4th class of problems Snowden talks about is chaos, and that's where everything's falling apart. We're not going to talk about working here. You just got to do your best if you're in chaos. Here's another way of looking at the nature of problems and where they fit, and this work comes out of the work of Ralph Stacey. On this axis, we're looking at the levels of agreement from high to low. On this axis, we're looking at the level of certainty about what we decide to do and what the outcome will be. Simple problems tend to sit down here where we have a pretty high level of agreement about what to do and certainty of the outcome. Linear and multi-step problems, the complicated problems, tend to be a little bit further out. When we get out here into the complex problems, where the levels of agreement and certainty are low, this is the area where we're doing most of the work. This is where partner-centered leadership sits, is right out here. This boundary is sort of a metaphorical boundary, and it's called the edge of chaos by some people. Out here, everything's falling apart in chaos. This is where the Process Enneagram sits. It's much too complicated a tool, or powerful of a tool, rather, to use for down here on the simple and complicated problems. It sits out here working on the complex problems together, and that's where it sits. So don't try to force your problems back into the corner. Accept that most of your problems are out here, and let's tackle them that way. That's what I meant early on when I talked about thinking forward and not trying to reframe things back in the old way. When we have self-organizing taking place, energy spontaneously bubbles up. If we purposefully engage this natural force, focusing and drawing on this energy of these natural forces of self-organization and doing, it's like we're in a canoe trip down a swiftly flowing river, and we've learned to read the water, and we're drawing energy from the river rather than fighting it. Our partner-centered leadership process is quite simple: sharing information freely, treating each other with respect and consideration to build trust and interdependence, and helping people to see how their work helps the whole organization succeed. This is the core of self-organizing leadership. When people see that their work is important for the success of the organization, meaning emerges. They made a suggestion, something changed because they did something. That makes people feel really, really good, and it's a source of tremendous energy. And these are what I call the self-organizing leadership process. This is back in the earlier years. I've changed that now to talking about partner-centered leadership. And as I said earlier, this is a blue ocean strategy. The Process Enneagram is a meta-model. There are models within the model. There's a great deal of depth and richness in the model. Using this out in the consulting and leadership work that we're talking about, the space is just about uncontested. There are hardly any other people out there working. So as you learn about this, you begin to develop a unique competitive advantage. And it begins to set you apart. And these tools are proven. I've worked with them for over 30 years. They never fail as long as people are willing to talk together and listen and learn together. There's no capital investment required in using the Process Enneagram. It eliminates the need for long-term training courses. And it reduces the costs of implementation. When you can do these kind of changes in a day or two, that's pretty darned impressive. And change begins to happen immediately. As I talked about in that one safety example, change began to happen the day after the workshop. And as I said earlier, it's always successful as long as people are willing to talk together and learn. And these blue ocean ideas come out of this book on blue ocean strategy that's referred to here. One of my friends in this work, from whom I've learned an awful lot, is Bruce Waltuck. He's a professor at Keene University School of Management and Marketing. Just this February, he made this comment when he was telling someone about the Process Enneagram. The Process Enneagram is a framework for structuring inclusive, collaborative, generative dialogue. Though almost deceptively simple when folks see it the first time, the Process Enneagram is built on deep insights and patterns of how we see ourselves, others, other situations, and the possibilities of what might be coming. It is inclusive, collaborative, generative, exploratory, iterative, and adaptive. And it's been used in all kinds of groups and all kinds of cultures, and I've referred to some of those. So this is Process Enneagram, which we're going to be talking about further in the workshop in the coming modules, is a hugely powerful way of bringing diverse groups of people together to solve complex problems and do it quickly and well. So I'd like to summarize Module 1 here for you. We've introduced the Process Enneagram, and you're getting some sense of what it is. We talked about the fire and the natural processes of self-organization and how work gets done. And the fire was such an important benchmark experience for me when the management processes got stripped off and we could see the natural processes being used spontaneously by the people. We've talked about the nature of problems and the need to use the right tools at the right level. And I've talked about the Process Enneagram as a blue ocean strategy together. In Module 2, we'll talk about leadership and managership. And as I said, leaders and managers are people. Leadership and managership are activities. Leaders can be anywhere in the organization. Managers tend to be in assigned level jobs, having authority to allocate resources and make financial decisions. In Module 2, we'll talk about building the natural organization, the history and development of the Process Enneagram, talk about the leadership dance and wholeness. The rest of the course here is shown next week. Next module is leading and managing. Module 3, we go more deeply into the Process Enneagram, and we'll also talk about simple rules. Most complex systems are governed by simple rules. In Module 4, I'll share some case studies with you. Actual work that I've done in showing how the Process Enneagram makes such important contributions to that work. In Module 5, we'll talk about transformation and waking up. And in Module 6, we'll talk about creating the safe conditions and partner-centered leadership. So when we complete the course, the deliverables I mentioned at the beginning of this module, I think will be achieved. But part of what you need to do is to think about what we've talked about today. And before we go from Module 1 to Module 2, I'd like you to think about your organization or one in which you've worked and list 4 to 5 dysfunctional behaviors you've witnessed. And think about the list being driven by the deeper problems and find out what they are. List them down. Think about what is causing this. What's deeper? Not the surface problems. What's driving the surface problems? Peel the top of the layer back and look underneath. And write down 4 or 5 ideas about why partner-centered leadership can help to eliminate these dysfunctional surface behaviors. So write down some specific things you see, and then think about partner-centered leadership and why this can help overcome these problems. That completes our work on Module 1. See you in Module 2. Thank you. Take care.